Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to my week 44, 45? What week are we on? I'm not even sure. But we're well into 2022. There we go. The last quarter of the year is upon us and it's November. Wow. I'm in the midst of the fan fiction readathon, but don't worry, I did read many other things besides that this week. I hope you had a happy and safe Halloween, and yeah, I'm excited for this time of year. We're actually having like fall weather where I live. A lot of times you don't know, it can go right from being 90 degrees to being 30, negative 30. It really just depends. Things can get pretty crazy around here. But luckily we're actually having a fall and I love it because I love fall weather and being cozy. And I hope you do too. So before we dive in today, I am going to say a big welcome to some new patrons and channel members. If you don't know, I do this full time. I'm a full-time content creator, book reader, reviewer, all that jazz. And for the last almost 7 months, my Patreon and channel members have been supporting me here because I do make money from YouTube ads, but it's more based on the generosity of people like you who watch me here. You are always supporting me when you watch my channel, of course, by liking, subscribing, recommending my content to people. But in exchange for some monthly support, I do have benefits, including early access to videos, which comes through channel memberships, voting in polls that I put up, one on like 5-6 hangouts is usually what it ends up being. It's not one-on-one, but it's like 1 to 5-6 is usually who can show up to a monthly hangout that I do. And then on my Patreon, I have exclusive vlogs and videos. Like yesterday, I just uploaded a update on my health journey. I wasn't feeling quite like putting that out for everyone. I wanted it to kind of go to a safer space because I was pretty vulnerable with my health and what's led me to this point. But that actually I made available to all of my patrons, and I probably will share it with my channel members eventually too. But yeah, and then like coming up, I'm going to be doing Christmas cards for all of my supporters. I'm very excited. I just ordered them the other day and they're gonna be so cute. I'm so excited for it. But yeah, let's say a welcome to, I have a new channel member, Sierra R. It's a sassy supporter, so thank you so much, Sierra. Welcome to the channel. It means so much to have you. And some new Patreons we have are Ruth R, who I know that she is a double supporter, so thank you. Nina Q, Hope B, Dusty F, and Alyssa R all joined the Patreon at different levels. Thank you all so much for supporting me. Like every time I get a notification of a new supporter, it's this like little ping of validation that there are people that actually care about what I've been building and doing here for the last 5 years, you know? But enough of that, let's get into what I read, because I do have, I believe, 11 books and things, so I'm not smothering the microphone the whole time. I apologize. Okay, let's dive in. So I did have 2 books yet that I finished in October before I was into November, and one of them is one that I've been like putting off for a while, not because I was like dreading the book, but because I've been dreading finishing this series, and I only had 2 books left in it. Actually, the first book and the last book, which is kind of funny. And that is the McCullough Mountain series by Lydia Michaels. And I read Almost Priest, which is the first book in the series, and I listened to the audiobook. Valentine PR had been handling the PR for these audiobooks. This series is actually a few years old, but Lydia had it like rebranded and redone, and then put in audio and like re-put out there and everything. And I've been enjoying these books pretty much all year. I've really liked them. So this one is about Colin and Sam, and they meet when Sam comes home with Colin's younger brother, Brayden. They're going to school together, and Colin is going to be taking his holy orders and becoming a priest at the end of the summer or something. And Sam and Brayden, they've been well, Brayden seems to think that they're dating, and to Sam, they're just really good friends, and he's tried to kind of move things forward, but she is just not quite interested in the same thing that he's interested in. But I mean, she really likes him, and when he asks her to come stay on the mountain for a few weeks, she agrees to do it. And that's when she meets Colin, and this chemistry between them is immediate. This is obviously, like, it's not fully taboo or forbidden because Colin hasn't taken his orders. He hasn't become a priest. He hasn't done those things. But it is like, there's still that like edge of forbiddenness because he's promised himself to God, like he's planning to become one. But it is really cool to meet everyone for the first time. The audiobook was kind of interesting for this one because obviously it was the first time that the narrator there are two narrators who do McCullough Mountain. Most of them, like, it's not duet or dual though. It's always like one person doing it. And Amanda something, I can't remember her last name, she's done quite a few of the books. But the thing is, she hadn't quite gotten everyone's accents decided yet. So it was kind of funny because there are some pretty heavy Irish accents in this series. The McCulloughs are like, some of them are like first generation Irish basically. Well, not quite that, but their accent has stayed very strong. And she didn't quite have them laid down. So again, it was weird to go back and listen to this first book after I've been listening to these books all year basically. So yeah, this was good. It was pretty angsty, and then this did involve a accidental pregnancy. And the heroine is kind of going to keep it from him because she doesn't want to mess up his plans. And I had to shake my finger a little bit at Sam, but this is a case of like, again, I love this series so much, and I know who Sam and Colin become. So it's a case of like, I know that they're the first couple that gets together in this series, and they're there all the time. And so it was strange. But one of the things about this series that I say is I read them out of order. You really can read them out of order because so many of the couple's stories like start at the same time. Like we see the couple from Broken Man, which is the gay couple, like we see their angst happening in the background. And like Kelly, who he actually will marry this virgin in town that everyone kind of like, they don't pick on her, but they think she's odd because she's saving herself, and he's the town harlot in the male sense of it. And we hear bits about this girl who's always like pining after him. And so there are these things being set in place that like, I know how they work out because I've read them all. So this was just very nostalgia feeling for me, but I gave this one 4 stars, and it does only have, I think this one only has like a 1.5 on the spice scale, but I really did like how they fell in love, and it was nice to finally have read the beginning. Because later in this, I did read the last one as well, so we'll talk about that when we get there. Then I jumped the gun a tiny bit because I've said I wanted to get on top of my books for November, and it wasn't quite time to start the fanfic readathon yet. So I actually did my reread of Last Light. So Last Light, I'm actually very excited because a few of my friends have really started reading Claire Kent in the last month and really liking her. And this is the book that really kind of starts off her like Apocalypse series and her Kindled series, because this is a standalone full-length novel that comes before Haven does. And 2 of my patrons who get annotated books actually picked this book for November, and I was like, you know what? I really want to reread Travis and Lane's story, and so I did. And this doesn't take place during the winter or fall necessarily, but it has that like, these 2 are road tripping and survival, and like any survival forced proximity books make me feel cozy. I don't know. I love reading books about day-to-day survival. I know that's weird, but it's just a thing for me. That's something that I really enjoy reading about. And so this book was just a warm hug. But okay, this book is about Lane and Travis, and they're both from the same town. Travis is in his 30s. Lane is, I think, like 21. Is she 19, 21? I'm not sure. She's pretty young though, but they know each other from the town. He's the guy who fixed her car. He was a divorced single dad. And in the beginning of this book, both Lane and Travis are, in the beginning, individually making their way to catch up with their town, who has left already to get to Fort Knox, where there's supposed to be a group that is safety. And Lane had stayed around because her grandmother was dying. The apocalypse was caused by like an asteroid hitting Earth, and so there was this like haze of like smoke and dust and unhealthy particles that were in the air, and so it caused a lot of people to die from this sickness. And so the young and the old really got hit. And so Lane had stayed with her grandma because she wasn't strong enough to travel, and Travis had stayed with his little girl and his ex-wife, who, it's not like they're like besties, but they had gotten married because they had gotten pregnant when they were young, and they had gotten divorced, and the mother had headed out. Now, that might sound a little harsh, but Travis is always very like, he sticks up for her. He's like, it literally was a matter of time, and it was only a matter of like a week or two that their daughter would die. And he stayed behind so that his wife could head off, or ex-wife could head off with this group. But anyway, so in the beginning of this, Lane is going to make her way to Fort Knox, and she and Travis run into each other, and he's like, let's travel together so we'll be safer. And she's like, no, I don't trust men these days. And he's like, okay, be safe. So she heads off, and then she runs into a group of people. And before she does that, she actually finds a man who's like dying, and he tells her a message that Fort Knox isn't safe and they need to look out for the wolf. And they don't quite know, she doesn't know what this means, but she's like, well, our people were going to go to Fort Knox, so we need to get to them, or I need to get to them and tell them that it's not going to be safe. And Travis is like, let's travel together. And she's like, no. So she takes off, and then she runs into a group who is a little bit sketchy, and Travis ends up coming up and helping her, and he's like, let's travel together. So he'd saved her, and she's like, you know what? Okay. It turns out he's totally a great guy, and he's an absolute, like, gruff cinnamon roll. He's delightful. Oh God, I love Travis. He's so swoony, you guys. He's so swoony. The way he thinks about Lane, and the way he protects her, and the way that they eventually, like, start having sex is in a very like practical manner for Lane, because she is still a virgin, and they're traveling together, and every day is so hard. And so when she first asked him to have sex with her, she's literally like, why can't we have something good? Let's have something that gives us pleasure, because we work so hard every day. What are we working for? And so Travis, like, this book is all from Lane's point of view, but we get from just in the things he says to her later that he did feel like he was taking advantage of her. He felt at first like she was only offering this to him as a way to like secure him, to protect her, but he really wanted to sleep with her, so he did. And then when she really enjoys herself, he's like, you actually like this? And she's like, yeah. Did you think I would lie? And he's like, well, you know, I wasn't sure whether you actually like me and found me attractive, or if you know, just wanted to keep me, because he's like, you're beautiful and you could have anybody. And so like, that's the kind of guy he is, okay? Emotionally constipated, but completely devoted. That's the kind of men that this author writes, and I'm obsessed with her. All these books are in KU, and they're brilliant, and I had such a fun time annotating this one, and I can't wait to get it to my friends. Okay, now we get into what I read in November. And the first book that I read, I had an arc that I needed to finish. This book is already out. I read Resisting Mr. Granville by Sam Mariano. You guys know I'm always ready to hop into a Sam Mariano, and she has like a lot of books coming out right now, because she had some books that were in anthologies, or they were in Kindle Vella. So this was in Kindle Vella, and it was released that way before, and it got released in its own book. So this one is a taboo age gap, and because it's Sam Mariano, of course, it has a lot of other stuff going on at the same time. So this one has, this is why I take notes. This one has Kennedy, who is 18 years old, and she has a horrible mother. She is the daughter of a single mom, and her mom is just awful, and she always has these horrible boyfriends. Well, one of her boyfriends for a very short amount of time is this man named Milo Granville. Now, he made a move on her while he was dating her mom. Now, I'm saying it that way, because we find out very soon that Milo only dated her mom because of Kennedy. He thought she was hot and he wanted to tap that, okay? Like, in the beginning, there's nothing more than this. This is what he wants. And actually, while he's still, again, dating her mom, he makes a move on her and, like, one night, like, eats her out, basically. And she's a little bit taken aback by this. And it's a bit of a dub con scenario because this is San Mariano after all. And so she tells her mom, who her mom breaks up with him, but then, of course, blames her for it and says that she's trying to chase this man away and blah, 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 blah. Her mom's awful. Blame her for being, like, kind of assaulted by a guy, right? This is the kind of woman this is. Well, to make matters more complicated, this man, Milo, has 2 sons, and one of them is in her grade. He is very smart, and he's actually tutoring her in, like, chemistry or something. And so she goes to his house pretty often to study with this kid. And he's using this forced proximity scenarios to make a move on her even more. And he goes from there. Now, there is a turn that happens in this book where an assault takes place on Kennedy, not by our hero. Because here's the thing that's super interesting about this in a San Mariano book, is that Milo was inappropriate in the beginning, right? Like, he literally ate her out with only semi-permission from her. But he becomes, like, the sweetest boyfriend ever. Like, honestly, he just thinks she's amazing. And he is trying to be very respectful of his kids because he believes that one of his sons might like her. And so really his only hesitancy of, like, saying that they're together, because he's not ashamed to be dating a 18-year-old, like, literally doesn't have a problem with it. But he is nervous about ruining things with his youngest son, the one who's in her grade. Now, he has an older son who is older than our heroine, and he is kind of the one who's a bit of a psychopath, because he informs them that the younger brother likes her and he doesn't think it's appropriate, and he maybe gets a little bit pushy about being like, well, you're not going to hurt my younger brother, and does some of what we would say is a typical San Mariano hero type of thing. But anyway, still, an assault happens to Kennedy by one of her mom's boyfriends, and then that takes a turn in this story about how she will cope with what happens. And I really don't want to spoil how this book plays out, but I am going to list the triggers for this so that you will kind of get a picture of what I'm talking about, but you'll still have to see for yourself. So yeah, obviously inappropriate power dynamics that we had going on, but you know that's got to be there. Then, like, assault happens. Also, then dubious consent. There is a rape fantasy, the fantasy, and some, like, cheating. And I am not calling the assault that, because I would never do that. So there's something else. And I don't know how else to explain it without spoiling it. But those are the trigger warnings. Be careful if you've read anything else by San Mariano. You won't know what you're going into. Like, I don't want to be like, you know what you're getting into. You don't. But also, like, be prepared for there to be triggers. Like, do not read San Mariano if you have any kind of sexual assault triggers at all. Just stay away. Stay away from her. She's not the author for you at all. Okay, next, I read something so completely the opposite of San Mariano, and that was Married for Christmas by Noelle Adams, which, as I've said before, and I'll say again, is actually Claire Kent. But Noelle Adams is her main title. Claire Kent was one she created to tell her kind of like apocalypse / a little bit darker stories. Although, again, I wouldn't really call Last Light like a dark romance by any means. And Married for Christmas was one that I had my eye on before. And then Teresa, someone I follow on Instagram, actually read it. And I really liked what she had to say. Because I was interested in this because it has a hero who's a pastor. But I knew that this was still an open door romance. And I was super intrigued by that because this isn't a taboo one. This isn't like Almost Priest or like Priest by Sierra Simone. This isn't about a woman tempting a man away from that because he's a pastor. And in evangelical pastor or Presbyterian, we're like, you can have a wife. So in this case, we have Daniel, And Daniel is friends with our heroine, whose name is Jessica. Now, Daniel is a widower. He lost his wife pretty tragically a few years ago. And Jessica was always friends with him and his wife. And after she died, they became even closer. Now, Jessica is 29, unmarried, you know, no kids, no pet. Well, wrong. She does have a pet. She has a big, wonderful dog. And one of the things that Daniel is struggling a little bit with is he's just taken on this new church. And some people have problems with him, like being a single pastor there. And Jessica would like a family. So she actually proposes to him and puts forth a marriage of convenience, but like it will be real. And she's like, I would like a family. I know you still want one, but I'm also not expecting you to be head over heels for me right this minute. But I just want to put it forward. And so they agree and they get married, and there is open door sex that happens in this, and also some like miscommunication, and also I told him he didn't have to love me, but I'm really in love with him. What do I do? Type of thing. So I really love this. This is the kind of scenario that Noelle Adams or Claire Kent will do again and again. And I love it. I love it because it's the kind of like, again, emotionally constipated hero that I love. And this one, there's even like, there's a warning at the beginning, but it's more of like explaining that this isn't overly focusing on religious themes. This isn't even overly bringing God into it. I mean, it is brought up sometimes, and there is like some grief and anger that the hero talks about, how he's really struggling not to be angry at God for taking his wife the way that he did. But I don't feel like, I mean, I feel like if you are someone who is raised in faith or you are a Christian, you will have a good appreciation for this. I feel like it did a good job. But also if you're not, I think it could still be interesting to read for like the marriage of convenience part of it. Because again, the religious aspect of it wasn't something that was like overwhelming or something that, you know, is going to make it awkward. Again, like they're not talking about philosophy or saying which religion's better or any of that kind of things. It's not pushing forward a agenda. It's his occupation. Like literally, it's his occupation in here. Like they use birth control in their marriage and everything. Like, you know what I mean? Like it isn't that kind of story. It's his occupation in this, and an occupation that requires him to have a wife type of scenario. So I gave this one 4 stars. It was only a 2 on the spice scale. Like I said, it was open door sex, but it's not like this is like an erotic novel by any means. So yes, also a trigger warning, the heroine's mother does have Alzheimer's, which I like to be sensitive to. All right, now we get into one of the fics that I finished. Here's the thing. Again, I am reading fic this week. The fanfiction readathon goes until Monday the 7th, but I'm in the middle of a lot of them because I'm reading some big ones, but I did finish a couple. So one of them to talk about is Come Back to Me by Palmetta Prisms. And this was one I was very much looking forward to because this is a Yellowstone fanfic, okay? So all the fics I'm mentioning here, you can find them on AO3, which is called Archive of Our Own. I will put a link to the fic in the description down below if you want to go to it. And there are posts on my Instagram story for how to download a fic to your Kindle if you would like to do it, okay? It's in the description it's in my stories under the fanfiction readathon on my profile, because some people don't know how to download it to your Kindle, and I made a way to show you. Anyway, so this one is Beth and Ripp fanfiction, and this was really fun. It wasn't overly long. I think this one was maybe like 250, 300 pages. It wasn't super long, but it was not quite what I was looking for the fanfic. There aren't a ton of Beth and Ripp ones that I've been able to find so far, or ones that are like completed, because this one kind of takes place between like, it would start like towards the end of season 1, and then, I mean, it kind of ends in its own place, but I'd say it went from like mid-season 1 to season 2, but like with an alternate kind of story where like Walker is kind of a double crosser in this, and Beth, the inciting like thing in this one is that, so Beth and Ripp like aren't together yet, you know, like they're not, like she's back in town and they've had their like, they've fucked each other, but she doesn't want to be like sucked into a relationship. They always kind of hurt each other with their actions. Again, that toxic relationship that we see in the beginning of the show. So, but the inciting incident of this is instead of just like kissing Walker, she fucks him. And this causes Ripp to be like, I think I'm done with her, because choosing him to fuck is a really big slap in the face. It's something that everyone in the bunkhouse is going to know. People know they have a complicated relationship. It's pretty much a dig at him directly, and it's pretty insulting. It was a bad move of hers. It's just not a good move to make. And so he actually has a fuck buddy that he goes to. There's this widow who works at the bar in town, and so he spends the night with her, and it makes Beth super jealous, and she is tired of this happening, and so she's like, I don't want you sleeping with someone else. And he's like, you literally fucked one of the men that I'm in charge of. So again, it's like a toxic relationship. And then, you know, it gets into them. There's caretaking this. Ripp gets hurt doing a job for John. And Beth, it really kind of kicks her into gear where she's like, I don't want to fuck around anymore. And he's like, you can't be with anyone else. The next time you're with someone else, we're done. So like that's laid out. But anyway, so then it plays out. And like I said, Walker ends up being kind of like a double crosser. So he's trying to get between them and cause issues. So this, again, it wasn't quite what I wanted. It wasn't as spicy as I wanted, but it was nice to dip my toe into Yellowstone fanfic. And it's definitely something I want to read more of. So I gave this 4 stars. Or what did I give it? Yeah, I gave this 4 stars, but it was only like a 2 on my spice scale. It could have been more. Honestly, some of the sex with the people they were with in the beginning was hotter than some of what they had later, you know? And then trigger warnings, there's assault and attempted essay that happens during this at some point. Okay, then I finally finished this behemoth that I've been reading for like 3 weeks. So I finished Troubled Blood by Robert Galbraith. Now, this is outside my normal purview. This is one of the books I was reading in October. Like I said, it took me 3 weeks to get through. This audiobook was like 35 hours long. And even on 1.8 speed, which I couldn't go any faster, because one of the highlights of reading this book is the narrator was thebomb.com. Okay, like he was excellent. All the different Scottish and Yorkshire and English accents that he does for this story were excellent. He was a magnificent performer. And anyway, I read this book because it was recommended to me by the Larks when I was at Wanderlust. They mentioned really loving this series and the mysteries and everything. And also that it had an incredibly slow burn romance, so I wasn't going into it for the romance. In this book, they are really starting to notice each other more. It's been a very slow process. You know, they don't want to risk what they have, but it's like getting there. Again, it's a very slow process, but it's happening. But what the mystery is in this one is there was this woman who went missing. Her name is Margot Bamborough, and her 41-year-old daughter is looking to find out what happened. So she actually knows who Cormoran Strike is because they've solved some high profile cases, and her, I think it's her wife or her girlfriend, see him when they're out drinking, and they approach him and they want to hire him to find out if her mother was killed by this serial killer who was active literally in the years that her mother disappeared, or if it was something else. They just have no answers. Did she really just disappear? Was she killed by this guy? Was she killed by her husband? What happened? And at the time, the detective who was handling her case, he was suffering with mental illness, and he botched the investigation, but also he had a lot of information that he's collected at the same time. So Robin and Strike take on this case, dealing with this serial killer. He's in a mental institution, and yeah, so there's a lot else going on that I don't want to spoil, but this book takes place over a year's worth of time because the daughter, they agree to hire him for a year, and they're like, if there's no significant movement, we'll stop. But like I wanted to invest to see if we could find out what happened to my mother, and if we don't, then we'll stop after a year. So there's this ticking clock. and you definitely feel the pressure grow. So this being outside what I normally like to read, I used to read a lot of mysteries. I've shared that I really liked suspense and romantic suspense and good mysteries. So like I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed listening to this. If I had been reading it, which there is a lot of cool like elements that get added into the story. So it was nice to listen and then also have the physical book. Let me find one of them. Because there's like case notes from the detective and things that they find, and they're like put into this book. Of course I can't find one when I try. So there'll be pages like this. So you can like follow along with just how crazy some of the notes were that this detective had taken, right? So anyway, I was surprised with the conclusion and how things worked out. It wasn't quite a 5-star for me because I feel like my expectation was off based on some of the info that like Ryan and Sophie had, like the things that they loved about it. I was like, ooh, I'm excited. And then when I actually was listening to that play out, like it wasn't as much as I thought. And I'm not even talking about the romance. Again, I had no expectations for romance in this. You're not going to get it from it. This is not the book where anything happens with them. It's just them realizing they maybe have more than friend feelings. Like, who knows? But yeah, it was like there were certain things that Ryan had told me he loved about it that ended up only being like 2 scenes in here. And I was like, this book is 945 pages, and there was 2 scenes that did what I thought happened. But I'm glad I read this, and I literally wanted to read the next one because book 6 is out, and that one's over 1,000 pages. But I may get the audio for that. Maybe I'll even save it until next October and like do one of these each October because, again, this is a huge commitment for me when I have so much other things to get through that are what I want to read. But I did not hate this by any means. It really made my brain work. I loved listening to the accents. So if you like suspense, I think you might enjoy this. Okay? Okay, then I finished another fic. This one has literally been on my, it's been on my TBR for fanfic since like the first month I started downloading fics, and I just never got to it. So I read Hot for Teacher, and this is by Mother of Bulls. And this one is sold as kind of like it's Gilmore Girls, but Scorpius and Draco are the Gilmore Girls. And this book starts out with Draco needing to go to Hogwarts for a teacher's meeting because Scorpius wrote an inappropriate letter to Hermione saying how beautiful her breasts were and that he can't wait to like date her, and that his dad told him it was a good idea to let women know how you feel about them so that they feel appreciated. And Hermione's like, did you really do that? 'Cause she's the teacher. And he is like, no, I mean, yes, but I didn't know he was writing it to you. I thought he was writing it to a 13-year-old, not to a grown woman. And so that's when they're first like interacting again after all these years. And it really is a rom-com. Like, it's wild. Ginny and Harry are hilarious in this book. They're really funny. And so I had a good time with this. My issue is that because of that like Gilmore Girls moniker, there's a lot of attention paid to Scorpius and the kids. And so like Albus and Rose and like the other young ones. And this book wasn't very long. It was novella length. And granted, this is part of a series. So there's, I know there's at least one more in this. But it just wasn't like enough of Hermione and Draco for me. But it was cute. It also wasn't as spicy as I was expecting to, which, you know, is always like not as fun for me as I want it to be. But they definitely have great angst, and they were very excited. Not angst, great chemistry. That's what I meant, not angst. And it was sweet. It was fun. So this one I gave 3.5 stars, and it was a 2.5 on the spice scale. Okay, then I read The Last Lydia Michaels. I read Intentional Risk. So this one is the last book in the series, but it was like a prequel. So this one is about Katie McCullough, who's the oldest. And throughout the whole series, she's married, she has kids. Her and Anthony have been together for ages, and we finally get her story. So this one was actually one that Lydia Michaels like didn't originally plan. These were things that I learned as I went, because this one is technically right a 0.5 or number 8. Like, she literally says like this is 8 or it's 0.5, because it's one people were asking for. They're like, you've literally given us every sibling except except Kate. We want to know what happened. So Kate, this starts out with her finding out she got pregnant by her high school boyfriend. She's a senior in high school. She's 18, and she made a mistake of hooking up. Well, I mean, he was her boyfriend, but like, she made the mistake of sleeping with him to keep him, and they got pregnant. This was her first time. It was bad, but she got pregnant. And so we start with her finding out she's pregnant, and also meeting Anthony, or Ant as he's called. And he's lived in the town for a couple of years. His family's Italian. There's 6 of them. She's from a family of 9 of them. Does she have 9? Or 7? There's 7 of them, and then their parents, so there's 9 of them. Yeah, but anyway, so he's from a big family too. He has a Philly accent, and he is kind of immediately likes her. And of course, she's just gotten this pretty devastating news. She's really scared. And he just wants to date her. He wants to be with her. And she's like, we have to just be friends, because she doesn't want to saddle him with this kid that's not his. And the father of the baby doesn't want anything to do with him. There's so many beautiful parts in this. Like, this one was really sweet, friends to lovers, of like him finding out and being like, him making the decision at one point of being like, I want to be with Kate. I know I want to be with Kate. I'm going to treat her baby like it's mine. I don't want that loser to be able to have anything to do with us. So what's the difference if we start our lives now, or we struggle and hustle and be apart from each other until I'm done with school, until I'm done with college? Like, what's the point? Like, let's be together now, where we can be supporting each other and being there and making sure that your son knows I'm his dad. And it's beautiful. And of course, how her parents react is so beautiful. I love Maureen. She is crazy. Okay, Maureen is the mother. She's so crazy, you guys, but she loves her family so much. And I love when she finds out and she just warns her daughter. She's like, girl, you know how fertile we are? How could you be so stupid? But she says it so like lovingly at the same time, that, you know, there's no like condemnation, and, you know, and just in their sweet way, she tells her, she's like, babies are not, they don't always come when we want, but they're always a blessing, and we are going to be happy, and we're going to help you. And like, her dad, of course, he is angry in the beginning. He's not angry at her, just at like the timing of it all. And also, poor Aunt gets blamed for a lot of things, because she's said to her family that like the baby's dad doesn't want anything to do with me, and like, I don't want to be with him anyway, so I'm not going to tell you who it is. And her dad, like, they all assume it's Aunt, because he's the only one that they've seen her with. And oh, poor Aunt. But Frank and Maureen, they love them. So like, this was so great to spend time with them. So this was a 4-star. This one was only a 1.5 on the spice scale, because there was not much going on with them, but they were so sweet, and Aunt just proves how devoted he is. And it was really nice to get to see how Kate got to her happily ever after too. Like, and it was fun to go back, because we get to see how supportive her younger siblings were of her, and we get to see like them all at their different ages and everything, which was really cute, because her being the oldest, then like everyone was behind her who we've watched get married already, so it was cute. Okay, moving right along. We're almost done here. I started a new manga series. I, of course, whenever I see a wrapped manga, I'm like ready to dive into it. And this one just had the second volume come out, and it's by Steamship, which is one of the spicier manga brands or companies, 7 Seas Entertainment. So this one's going to be a reverse harem, which I know is outside my purview, but I was kind of interested by it. This one is what, I can't remember how you pronounce it, but it's one where there's reincarnation, kind of. So for this one, our heroine is Mashiro, and after an accident, she wakes up in a strange world to find herself surrounded by 4 beastly men who call themselves Celestials. And Mashiro is the only human female in this world. And so the Celestials are imploring her to mate with them and bear their children. So she's literally supposed to help repopulate the world. And she is just super overwhelmed because also she will be in extreme pain without their bodily fluids. So in the beginning, that's just kissing, but she has to have like doses of their saliva to like keep her healthy. So that's like starting it off, but there's dubious consent right away. Our heroine is not super comfortable with everything that's happening immediately. So, you know, that's something you just get used to in these types of stories. But I do have the second volume already as well, like I said, and so I want to see what I think of that before I decide if this is a series I'm going to stick with. It also, for being a explicit content warning, this one didn't really have too much happening yet, which often happens in like a first volume, unless said volume is fire in his fingertips, of course. So this one was only a 3-star for me also because there's so many characters you have to get close to since this is a reverse harem, and it's just like, you know, this isn't enough to do that right away, but I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued how this is going to go and if we're going to get around to the baby making sooner or later, right? So I gave this 3 stars, and it was only like a 1.5 on the spice scale. And of course, as I said, dubious consent is an issue, so be on the lookout. Okay, then I finished another fic last night. I read my one-shot, which if you don't know, a one-shot basically means you can read it in one sitting. There aren't really chapters to it. It is like a single scene or scenario that's going on, and that's what's happening. So this one I picked up because some of the other hosts were reading this one, and I just wanted to finish something else. You know what I said, like I'm in the middle of a bunch of really big fics, and I just wanted to finish something. So this one is called Song of the Sands, and this is a one-shot that involves Nesta, Cassian, and Azriel, okay? So it is summer solstice, and the night court has been invited to the day court, and there's this like crazy magic in the air. Everyone's really horny, and Cassian and Nesta, they're getting it on the dance floor, and Nesta sees Azriel across the way, and he's watching her, and she feels this crazy chemistry, and Cassian kind of gives her the go-ahead and is like, we've shared people before, like, you're still mine. And she's like, yeah, I'm not giving up on you or anything. But they have a hot little threesome together. This is by The Chaotic Wallflower. This was only, like I said, like 50 pages. It was really smutty. There was DP happening. This was a MFM scenario, though. Unfortunately, I thought this was going to have some MMF. But it was MFM scenario, and it was really hot. It was good. Azriel was a dirty talking shadow master, and he used his shadows in really fun ways. And I guess this author is writing like a bigger ACOTAR fic, and this like kind of fits within it about what was happening in the summer court on summer solstice. And she said that she may write other one-shots like this in like different courts, and I'm like, I'm here for it. So I just went and I gave this 5 stars. Okay, this was fun, this was spicy, it involved characters that I love in a scenario that excited me, and I had a good time. So we rolled with it. All right. And then the last thing that I finished last night was Savor Me. This is by Ashley Mack. This is a novella that fits into her Senses series. So the way she's kind of doing this, which I think is really smart, is she has a book and a novella and a book and a novella. And she's going to do that for the whole series, I think. So like there was The Sight of You, and then there was Look at Me, which I haven't read yet, but I will. And then there's The Taste of You, and then there was Savor Me. So I've read The Sight of You, The Taste of You, and so then I read Savor Me. This one just came out the other day, and this one was fun because it has a heroine who definitely has switch energy, like she'll be both, but in this she's more the dominant in most of the scenes, but the hero is not necessarily submissive energy, but again, he's willing to switch it up, and I love how this played out. So the hero, Dominic, he works at the company that the family owns in the other series. Like, he works with Aster, who is the heroine in book 2. And him and Cleo, they have a one-night stand together where they're like, this is only going to be one night. And they're like, cool, what are you into? And so they like say what their kinks are. And he's like, you can degrade me. I love it. Please don't slap me, but you can spank me. Like, they go through everything and it's great. And literally he has restraints in his room and everything. And she's like, can I put you? And he's like, yeah, I don't want my legs restrained, but you can restrain my hands. So literally their first night together, what happens is she restrains him to the bed and rides his face, and it's amazing. Like, woo, it's so good. It's so good. And then they're just supposed to go back to their, you know, regular lives. And in the work scenario, he has a brother who's a criminal, so he gets tagged for an internal investigation at work, and it's actually Cleo who's responsible for doing that investigation. So that's a bit of an entanglement, but then also they can't stop thinking about each other and how well they fit together, what their kinks were and their needs were. And so they decide to do a beta test of their relationship. And I loved the use of that. So this was a 4-star read for me. It was a 3 on the spice scale, and no trigger warnings really stuck out to me for this. Like, besides, like, yes, there's BDSM stuff in it, so be prepared. But I had a great time with this. It was nice to see Aster and Isaac in this one, and I can't wait for, I think The Sound of You is next. I'm getting really excited for it. I love this series and all. So there y'all go. Those are all the books that I read in this week. Like I said, I think it's week 44. I usually have it written in my little book, and I don't. But thank you so much for watching this, and yeah, I can't wait to chat with you in the comments. Make sure you've liked and subscribed. If you're interested in supporting my channel, please check that out down below, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.